My children invited me to a family dinner at the most luxurious restaurant in the city, but when I arrived, there wasn't a single table reserved for me. My daughter-in-law, Cecilia, gave me a condescending smile and said maybe a more casual place would suit me better. I laughed a deep, genuine laugh from a heart that had been wounded for too long. Everyone stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. I walked straight to the reception desk and told the manager I wanted the best table available. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Elias, my trusted business partner for the past 15 years, immediately came forward to greet me. My children had no idea that this very restaurant, the one where they had just humiliated me, belonged to me. That every glass of wine, every dish they ordered, every dollar they spent went straight into my account. I'm Laura Williams, 69 years old, and tonight I saw the true faces of the children I sacrificed my whole life to raise. I became a widow at 30, left alone with 3 small children, David, Mark, and my youngest, Emily, who died of pneumonia because I couldn't afford private hospital care. From that day on, I swore my children would never lack anything the way I once had. I worked as a housekeeper for 40 years of washing, cooking, and scrubbing other people's homes. 40 years of cracked hands, a bent back, and waking up at 5 a.m. every morning to make breakfast before heading to work. While other mothers took their children to the park, I was on my knees cleaning floors. When they went on vacation, I was working weekends to pay for my kids' extracurriculars. I gave them everything I never had paid for their private college tuition, bought them their first cars, covered apartment deposits, and hosted their lavish weddings. David graduated in finance, got a job at a major bank, and married Cecilia, the cold woman who had looked down on me from the moment we met. Mark was always timid, relying on his older brother to make decisions for him. 6 months ago, I retired. Few people knew that, in truth, I hadn't depended on a maid's salary for over 15 years. I let everyone believe I was just a poor old woman because when people think you have nothing, that's when you see who they really are. Last week, Cecilia called me in her fake sweet tone. "Mother Laura, we're hosting a dinner to celebrate David's promotion. It's at that rooftop restaurant, don't forget to come." Of course, I knew the place better than any of them. That evening, I arrived on time, wearing my favorite simple dress. David, Cecilia, Mark, and his girlfriend Stella were already seated. There were 5 chairs, none for me. I said softly, "Looks like there's 1 chair missing, isn't there?" David glanced up, his eyes full of irritation and embarrassment, the same look he always gave me in front of his colleagues. "Mom, I thought you'd be more comfortable somewhere else. This place is a bit upscale, and I wouldn't want you to feel out of place." Cecilia nodded, her thin smile sharp as glass. "Exactly. Maybe somewhere cheaper would suit you better, Laura." Those words slapped me harder than any hand ever could. Mark turned away, too ashamed to speak. Stella looked uneasy but stayed silent. I just laughed, softly at first, then louder, echoing through the quiet dining room. When I walked up to the reception, Elias was already waiting. I spoke loudly enough for them all to hear. "I'd like the best table in the house." Elias bowed slightly. "Of course, Mrs. Laura, your usual table is ready." The room fell silent. David's eyes went wide. Cecilia turned pale. Mark dropped his silverware. They had no idea that Laura, the housekeeper, had been hiding secrets powerful enough to shake their glittering world. While they spent the money I gave them, I quietly invested. In real estate, in restaurants, in the future. And one of those investments was the very restaurant where they had just tried to humiliate me. I sat at the largest table, the one reserved for politicians and celebrities. Elias snapped his fingers, and 3 waiters appeared. "Mrs. Laura, what wine would you like tonight?" "Bring me a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2010, and send another bottle to that table from the restaurant owner." When the waiter delivered the bottle to my children's table, David and Cecilia froze. David stood up, stammering, "Mom, what is this? Why are they treating you like that? Are you the owner here?" I smiled calmly. "That's right, David. I've been the majority shareholder of this restaurant for 15 years. Every time you've hosted a party here, every glass of wine you've ordered, it's all been my earnings." Cecilia's voice trembled. "But how could you afford to buy a place like this?" "Simple, my dear daughter-in-law. While you were spending the money I gave David, I was saving the rest. While you flaunted your luxury, I was investing quietly. And now, I'm no longer just the housekeeper in your eyes." I looked at each stunned face in turn. "You thought I was poor, but when I was at my poorest, that's when I learned how to become rich with patience, determination, and silence. I am Laura Williams, the woman who spent a lifetime being underestimated, but tonight, in my own restaurant, I reclaimed my dignity. And in the bewildered eyes of my children, I realized something. Sometimes, the most valuable lesson a mother can teach her children is to let them taste the humiliation they once served her. I had wanted to see if they would offer me help, if they'd care about my well-being, if they'd even ask how I was surviving. But no, they used what they thought was my vulnerability as a chance to get rid of me. I looked straight at David, my eldest son. "Do you remember our talk last week?" I asked. "You said maybe I should move into a retirement home where I'd be around people my own age. What you really meant was you wanted to erase me from your life because you no longer found me useful." Mark, my youngest, finally gathered enough courage to approach me. "Mom, we didn't mean to. We just thought it would be better for you." I cut him off with an icy stare. "Mark, for 40 years I've known what's best for me, working myself to exhaustion so you could have everything you wanted, giving up my dreams so you could chase yours. But now, when it comes to my own life, suddenly I'm too old and senile to decide what's right for me?" Elias, my restaurant manager and trusted partner, leaned in and whispered, "Mrs. Laura, there are reporters outside. Looks like someone leaked that you're here." I smiled. "Good. Let them in. It's time the whole city learned who Laura, the former housekeeper, really is." Cecilia's face drained of color, her eyes filling with panic. "Please don't. If this gets out, David could lose his job at the bank." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" Cecilia, the same woman who humiliated her mother-in-law in public and tried to throw me out of a restaurant I own, now worries about her reputation? "Don't worry. This is just the beginning. Because the terrace isn't my only investment. I have other businesses, other properties, other surprises you can't even imagine. And now that you've shown your true colors, it's time you learn the consequences of underestimating the woman who gave you life." Reporters stormed into the restaurant like a wave. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed at our table. David hid behind his napkin. Cecilia covered her face, whispering in despair that this would destroy their reputation. Mark sat frozen, just like every other time things got difficult. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Laura, is it true that you're the owner of the Terrace restaurant and several other high-end businesses in the city?" I stood up, lifting my head high after decades of bowing in silence. "Yes," I replied. "I've been the majority shareholder of the Terrace for 15 years, and I also have investments elsewhere, none of which my children ever knew about." Another reporter continued, We've been told that just minutes ago, your own children tried to throw you out of this restaurant, saying you didn't belong in such an exclusive place. Is that true?" I smiled. "Exactly. The two sons I devoted 40 years of my life to believe they had the right to humiliate me publicly in a place that belongs to me." The cameras instantly turned toward David and Cecilia. "Sir," one reporter asked, "is it true that you tried to remove your mother from the restaurant?" David's face flushed red, his voice trembling. We didn't know. It was a misunderstanding." I cut him off, my tone clear and firm. There was no misunderstanding. It was a calculated humiliation. They told me to find somewhere cheaper, somewhere more appropriate for my situation. They even suggested McDonald's. The restaurant fell completely silent. Outrage rippled through the reporters. One turned to Cecilia, asking, "Mrs. Cecilia, is it true that you told your mother-in-law, the woman who has financially supported your family for years, that she should eat at McDonald's instead of joining your husband's promotion dinner?" Cecilia stammered, "No, I didn't mean that. I just thought she'd be more comfortable." But her excuse sounded pathetic. Everyone saw her for who she truly was, a cruel, shallow woman driven by money and status. I looked straight into the camera. "That's not all. Just a week ago, these same two sons came to my house suggesting that I move into a nursing home. They said it would be better for me, so I wouldn't have to live alone in an apartment that was too big, the same apartment I bought myself, where I raised them." The camera zoomed in on Mark's face, pale as paper. "Mom, please," he begged, "don't say that on television. People will think we're monsters." I answered calmly, "You are monsters, ones I unintentionally created by giving you everything without teaching you the value of sacrifice." An older reporter asked, "Mrs. Laura, how long have you been planning this revelation?" I gave a faint, bitter smile. I didn't plan it. For years, I kept my investments private to protect my children from the envy and complications that money brings. I wanted them to build their lives on merit, not my wealth. But 3 months ago, when I lost my job and told no one, I wanted to see how they'd react. And when I saw that their first instinct was to get rid of me, not to help me, I realized I had raised two strangers. David tried to step forward, probably to do some damage control, but Elias gently blocked him. He'd worked with me long enough to know I'd waited years for this moment, and nothing could stop me now. A reporter turned to Cecilia. "Did you know your mother-in-law had this kind of fortune? Why do you think she never told you?" Cecilia looked around desperately for help from David, but he kept his head down, avoiding the cameras. We always thought she was just a housekeeper." I nodded. "That's right. I never told you because I wanted to see who you truly were when you believed I had nothing to offer. And now I know. The love you claimed to have for me was nothing but dependence disguised as affection." A young reporter asked, "So what will happen now with your family relationship?" I replied firmly, "There's nothing left to save. They made their choice when they humiliated me. Now I'm making mine. From this moment on, David and Mark are no longer my sons, and Cecilia is no longer my daughter-in-law." The room fell into a deathly silence. Two grown men slumped into their chairs, realizing they had just lost not only their mother, but also the secret financial lifeline that had sustained them for years. The news spread everywhere within hours. The video titled, "Housekeeper Reveals She's a Millionaire After Being Humiliated by Her Children," went viral, setting the entire city ablaze. The next day, David was suspended. The bank announced it could not keep an employee involved in a family scandal that damaged its reputation. Cecilia was cut off from every social event, her name erased from every elite club list. As for me, Laura Williams, I chose to stay at the city's most luxurious hotel, the same place where I had once cleaned rooms for years. Now, I occupied the presidential suite on the 30th floor, gazing at the skyline, calmly planning the next chapter of my life. Mark called countless times. His voice trembled through voicemail. "Mom, I'm sorry. Please forgive us. We didn't know what we were doing." I listened but never replied, because real family doesn't humiliate each other in public. Real family doesn't abandon you when they think you're no longer useful. Real family never suggests putting their own mother in a nursing home just to escape their guilt. The following day, my lawyer, Ezekiel Morris, arrived carrying a thick stack of documents. "Mrs. Laura," he said, "I've reviewed everything. Both David and Mark are listed as beneficiaries of several of your investments and assets. David's apartment, the car he drives, even his savings account receive automatic transfers from you." I nodded, my voice cold. "Then cancel everything. From now on, they'll take care of themselves like the independent adults they claim to be." Ezekiel smiled slightly. "I also looked into their finances. Without your hidden support, David won't last 3 months. The apartment he lives in is under your name. Legally, he's just an uncontracted tenant." That afternoon, Cecilia showed up at the hotel, her face pale and desperate, begging to meet me. I agreed right there in the crowded lobby, so she couldn't make a scene. "Mrs. Laura, please listen. David's about to lose his job. If you take back the apartment, we'll have nowhere to live. We're in debt, we have obligations." I looked at her, my gaze calm but icy. "How interesting. Now you care about financial consequences. When I lost my job 3 months ago, you didn't care, you only cared about getting rid of me. When you thought I was poor, you chose humiliation. Now that I'm rich, you choose to beg. But unfortunately, it's far too late." Now that they knew I truly had money, they came crawling back with crocodile tears. David followed behind his wife, looking completely defeated. "Mom," he murmured, "we know we made terrible mistakes, but we're your blood. You can't destroy our lives like this." I laughed a loud, resonant laugh that filled the hotel lobby. "Destroy your lives? That's funny. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply taking back the support you've always taken for granted. You decided that Laura, the old housekeeper, didn't deserve to sit at your table. Fine. Now you'll see what life is like without Laura, the silent investor who funded all your luxuries." I looked directly at David and Cecilia. "You're going to learn to live on your own the same way I did for 40 years to raise you." Cecilia tried one last desperate attempt, her voice shaking. "If you do this, if you make everything public, you'll suffer too. People will think you're a cruel mother who abandoned her children." I smiled, a cold, cutting smile that made her fall silent. "My dear Cecilia, the whole world already knows who abandoned whom. The videos are everywhere now. Everyone's seen you throwing me out of my own restaurant." That night, from my luxurious suite, I called Elias to discuss the next step. The press wouldn't stop calling. Television networks wanted exclusive interviews, and documentary producers wanted to tell the story of the housekeeper who built a secret empire. But I had a different plan. I didn't just want revenge, I wanted rebirth. I wanted to rebuild my life without the emotional parasites that had drained me for decades. I wanted to prove that a 69-year-old woman could start over and be stronger than ever. The next morning, phase 2 of my plan began. David and Mark were about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives: never underestimate your mother. The media war started when David and Cecilia recorded a tearful video and posted it on Instagram. In it, They tried to paint themselves as victims of a vengeful and manipulative mother. David claimed that I'd hidden my fortune to control my children psychologically, while Cecilia wept that a real mother would never abandon her kids over a simple misunderstanding. The video spread quickly, but the reaction was the complete opposite of what they expected. The comments were filled with outrage. Everyone remembered how they had thrown me out of the restaurant, mocking that McDonald's would be more appropriate for my status. While they tried to play the victims, the world saw nothing but arrogance. But I still had one card left: the recordings. For years, every time they visited, every sarcastic remark or cruel joke they made, I recorded it not out of spite, but because my memory wasn't as sharp, and I wanted to keep track of the important things my children said to their mother. I never imagined those recordings would become my greatest weapon. My lawyer, Ezekiel, helped me set up a YouTube channel. At 69, I became an accidental influencer. My first video was titled, "The Truth Behind the Crocodile Tears." I uploaded it on Thursday night. By Friday morning, it had more than 500,000 views. In the video, I played the recordings: David calling me a financial burden, Cecilia mocking my cheap clothes in front of her friends, and Mark casually saying, "It would be better for everyone if Mom moved somewhere else," because they were embarrassed when she showed up at important events. The most shocking recording was from 3 weeks before the restaurant incident. David had come to my house pretending to visit, but really, he was snooping through my papers, trying to calculate how much it would cost to put me in a nursing home. In the tape, he could be heard rummaging through drawers, chuckling as he said, "Old people get confused, Mom. Families should control their money before they waste it on something stupid." The public's reaction was explosive. The phrase, "justice for Laura," became the #1 trending topic worldwide. Thousands of people began sharing their own stories: mothers abandoned by their children, elderly parents mistreated by their families. My story had touched a universal pain, the pain of being betrayed by one's own blood. International media rushed to contact me. CNN wanted an exclusive interview. Netflix sent a proposal to make a documentary about my life. Within days, Laura, the wealthy housekeeper, had become a global symbol of a mother's dignity and justice. Meanwhile, David and Cecilia's lives crumbled. The bank where David worked released an official statement. "We cannot continue to employ an individual whose behavior has publicly disrespected and harmed the integrity of family values." He was fired permanently. Cecilia also lost her job at the art gallery. Her elderly employers said they were disgusted by her actions. All her wealthy friends quickly cut ties. Mark tried to distance himself from the scandal by posting an apology video, claiming he had always disagreed with how his brother treated their mother. But the audience wasn't stupid. I had clear audio proof that Mark had also laughed about sending me to a nursing home and mocked my cheap and outdated dress at his birthday party. Mark's apology video became a joke. People mocked him as a coward, blaming others to save himself. Estella, his girlfriend, broke up with him soon after because the parents at the school where she taught didn't want their kids being taught by someone connected to a family that mistreated their own mother. By Friday night, all 3 of them called me, their voices trembling with panic and despair. They had lost everything: their jobs, reputations, and social circles. They begged to meet, promising to apologize publicly and pleading with me to take down the videos and stop the media campaign that was destroying their lives. I agreed to meet them, but under my conditions, at the Terrace, my restaurant, on Saturday morning, not for reconciliation, but so they could hear the only terms under which I would consider stopping the exposure of their actions. The next morning, they arrived on time, exhausted and broken. David had lost more than 20 pounds. Cecilia's eyes were dark and sunken, her hair a tangled mess. Mark looked like a shadow of himself. They sat in front of me at the very same table where, a week earlier, they'd told me to leave. The irony was delicious. Now they were the ones who didn't belong there. I looked at them, feeling a strange mix of power and sorrow. These were once the babies I'd cradled in my arms, the kids I'd read bedtime stories to, the young adults I'd worked myself to exhaustion for paying for their college, their cars, their weddings. Now they were three strangers trembling before the woman they had once humiliated. "All right," I said slowly. "You're going to hear my conditions without interrupting. Condition 1, you will record a public apology video. No vague statements. Each of you must admit, specifically, what you said and did, every insult, every act of humiliation, and explain why it was wrong." David tried to speak, but I silenced him with a look. Condition 2, you will repay every dollar I invested in your lives over the past 20 years. The apartment, the cars, the tuition, the weddings, the vacations. My lawyer has calculated everything with interest. $800,000 in total. Cecilia went pale and whispered, "That's impossible." "We don't have that kind of money," I replied coldly. "Of course not, because you never learned how to earn it. You've spent your lives living off my hard work. Condition 3, you'll work to pay off your debt. I own several businesses, restaurants, hotels, laundromats, all needing cleaners, dishwashers, janitors. You'll start from the bottom, earning minimum wage." Mark's jaw dropped. "Mom, you can't make us work as housekeepers like you." I cut him off, my voice sharp as steel. "Exactly. You'll do the same work I did for 40 years to raise you." Condition 4, you'll live in the old apartment complex where I raised you. No mansion, no luxury car. You'll take the bus, you'll walk, you'll live like real working people so you finally understand the value of money. Cecilia burst into tears. "This is revenge. This is cruelty." I looked at her calmly. "No, this is justice. Revenge would be leaving you on the streets. I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourselves, but you'll earn it the hard way." Condition 5, you'll attend mandatory family therapy not to fake reconciliation, but to understand the depth of the wounds you've caused. Condition 6, you'll volunteer at nursing homes caring for elderly people abandoned by their children. Maybe then you'll understand what you once tried to turn me into. David tried to plead. "Mom, be reasonable. We can't do all this. It's too extreme." I met his eyes and gave a bitter smile. Extreme? Extreme was suggesting I eat at McDonald's instead of sitting at your table. Extreme was plotting to send me to a nursing home. Extreme was humiliating me in my own restaurant. Then I leaned forward, my tone final. Condition 7, you'll sign legal documents renouncing all rights to my inheritance after I'm gone. I want to be certain that what I leave behind will never fall into the hands of people who never appreciated it. Asterisk, asterisk, you will not inherit a single cent. All of my assets will be donated to charities that truly help working mothers and abandoned seniors. Silence filled the room. The three of them looked at each other terrified, trying to calculate if there was any way out. They knew there wasn't. Without my secret financial support, without jobs or friends, they were facing complete ruin. Condition 8. If any of you attempt to manipulate the situation, leak information to the media to play the victim, or break any part of this agreement, I will release the rest of the recordings. And trust me, I have enough material to bury every chance of public redemption you might have left. Cecilia raised her head, eyes full of despair. How long do we have to go through this before you think we've learned our lesson? I answered calmly. It could take months, or it could take years. That depends on you. I want to see genuine change, not fake remorse born from desperation. Condition 9. You'll move out this week. Ezekiel has already prepared the lease agreements for your new apartments. They're small and modest, but decent, just like the place I used to live when you were children. You'll learn how to live on a tight budget and appreciate every dollar you earn. Condition 10, and the last one, you'll work. 6 days a week in my businesses, under the supervision of managers who report directly to me. There will be no special treatment for being the owner's children. In fact, you'll be evaluated more strictly than anyone else. Mark's voice trembled. If we do all of this, will you really forgive us, Mom? Can we be a family again? I looked him straight in the eyes. I don't know, Mark. Forgiveness isn't something that can be promised. It has to be earned day by day, through actions, humility, and true change of heart. You destroyed something that took decades to build. If it can be rebuilt, it will take a long time. David asked the question all three were thinking. And if we refuse? I smiled a cold, cutting smile. Then I continue the media campaign. I'll post the rest of the recordings, the ones of you mocking my clothes, laughing about sending me to a nursing home, or ridiculing my attempts to fit into your world. Believe me, I have enough material to keep this scandal alive for years. They exchanged desperate glances. They knew the truth. Accept or lose everything. 2 hours of tense silence passed before David finally spoke. We accept. Cecilia and Mark nodded weakly. There was no other choice. Ezekiel, who had been waiting at a nearby table, approached with a thick stack of contracts. Every clause was detailed, every condition legally protected. There would be no room for misunderstanding or later negotiation. They signed with trembling hands, officially binding themselves to years of repentance. By Monday morning, their new lives began. David was assigned to the cleaning crew at my corporate offices. The man who once wore expensive suits now wore a blue uniform and held a mop. His former colleagues from the bank saw him through the glass doors, their faces full of a mix of pity and scorn. Cecilia was placed in the kitchen at the terrace, the very restaurant where she had once humiliated me. She started washing dishes, peeling vegetables, and scrubbing grease off the stoves. The hands that once knew only luxury creams and manicured nails were now cracked and cut from industrial detergent. Mark was assigned to maintain my rental properties, fixing plumbing, painting walls, mowing lawns, cleaning driveways. The physical work left him exhausted every night, but for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to earn money with his own hands. The first few weeks were brutal. Their bodies were weak, their spirits heavy. David complained of back pain after every shift. Cecilia cried in secret over burns from hot oil. Mark's palms blistered and hardened. But what hurt most wasn't the labor, it was the public humiliation. Customers at the terrace recognized Cecilia from the viral videos and took photos of her washing dishes. Pictures of the woman who kicked her mother-in-law out of her own restaurant spread all over social media. David's old co-workers visited the office to see for themselves, snapping photos of him holding a mop and sharing them in group chats with mocking captions. Meanwhile, I moved into my new mansion in the most exclusive part of the city, a property I had purchased years ago but never lived in, to avoid suspicion. Now, I didn't have to hide anymore. The house had 10 bedrooms, a pool, expansive gardens, and a panoramic view of the city. After 40 years in cramped apartments, cleaning other people's homes, I was finally living the way I deserved. And for the first time in my life, I had a housekeeper. Juana, a 50-year-old woman who lost her job during the pandemic, worked for me. I paid her a generous wage, provided health insurance, and gave her a comfortable room on the property. I wanted to prove that wealth doesn't make people cruel, only ingratitude does. My television interviews continued to attract attention. I appeared on Oprah, Ellen, and CNN. My story inspired millions of older women who had been overlooked and undervalued. I received thousands of letters from mothers across the country sharing their own quiet sacrifices. I founded the Invisible Mothers Foundation, providing financial and legal support to older women exploited, abused, or abandoned by their children. The impact was beyond anything I imagined. Society began reflecting on how it treated the generation that had sacrificed everything for it. 2 months later, my children asked to meet again. They said they had changed and wanted to prove it. I agreed, meeting them at my new home, in the living room overlooking the garden. The sight was astonishingly different. My 3 children, tired, their clothes stained with grease, their hands rough, their faces humble. David spoke first. "Mom, these past 2 months have been the hardest of my life. I finally understand how hard you worked to raise us." Cecilia's eyes welled with genuine tears this time. "I'm sorry, Laura. I used to look down on you, to think you were beneath us. But now that I work in the kitchen, I realize how strong and admirable you truly are." Mark's voice broke. "Mom, I was a coward. I didn't stand up for you when you needed me most. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I promise, every day I'm trying to make it right." I listened quietly. I said nothing. I just looked at each face and wondered, this time, have they really changed? Time would tell. 6 months later, something extraordinary began to happen. David had become genuinely humble, greeting everyone at the office, from executives to janitors, with respect. He had learned that all honest work deserved dignity. Cecilia had become one of the most hard-working employees at the terrace. The chefs respected her because she never complained, always arrived early, and stayed until everything was spotless. She finally understood the value of every dollar earned by one's own effort. Mark. He had discovered pride in his maintenance work. He loved fixing things, helping people. For the first time, he found real satisfaction in his work. But the greatest turning point came when they began volunteering at the nursing home. Seeing elderly people left behind by their families showed them exactly how I must have felt. David told me about a 70-year-old man who had waited 3 years for a visit that never came. Cecilia taught a lonely woman how to cook again. Mark quietly repaired furniture, lamps, and heaters for the residents. One Sunday afternoon, I received a call from the director of the nursing home. "Mrs. Laura, I have to tell you your children are doing something extraordinary. They come here every week, caring for the residents as if they were their own family." I froze for a moment. There was no doubt anymore they had truly changed. 8 months after that fateful night at the restaurant, I did something I never thought I would. I invited my children to have dinner at my own home. When they walked in, I immediately noticed they were no longer the same. Thinner, tanned, but with steadier eyes. Juana served a simple but warm meal. For the first time in years, we sat at the same table, not as the giver and the takers, but as a family relearning how to love. No more pretending, no more lies or calculations, just real conversations among people who had finally learned sincerity. David apologized to me again, but this time it was different. "Mom," he said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness because I want your money or because I want my old life back. I'm sorry because I finally understand the pain I caused you." I stole the dignity you earned through 40 years of sacrifice. Cecilia added something that truly surprised me. Laura, I've been thinking a lot. I want to change careers. I want to study culinary arts properly. Working in your restaurant kitchen made me realize a passion I never knew I had. I don't want to go back to being that shallow woman I used to be. Mark was the most honest of all. Mom, I know I'll probably never fully regain your trust, but I want you to know that these past few months have been the first time in my adult life I've felt proud of who I am. Honest work has given me self-respect I never had when I lived off your money. When dinner ended, I made a decision I'd been weighing for weeks. I told them they could stop working in my businesses if they wanted. They had completed 8 of the 12 months I'd originally required, and their transformation was undeniable. But to my surprise, all 3 asked to continue. David wanted to work 4 more months to complete a full year. Cecilia asked to stay in the restaurant kitchen while studying culinary arts. Mark wanted to keep doing maintenance work because he had found his true calling. A year after the event that completely changed our lives, I organized a real family dinner this time, not in the fancy dining room, but in the terrace's kitchen. Cecilia cooked for us. Mark had repaired the table we ate at, and David had polished every surface until it shone. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Deep wounds take time to heal, but it was a genuine new beginning. For the first time in decades, I was having dinner with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. That night, as I drove back to my mansion, I thought about the year that had passed. I had lost children who once felt like strangers, but I had found real people, people worth loving and being proud of. I had lost emotional parasites but gained a true family. I didn't regret raising them. I only regretted not realizing sooner that kindness should never come at the cost of self-destruction, and that real maternal love sometimes requires painful lessons to raise children worthy of it. At 70 years old, I learned it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. 5 years have passed since that night, the night that changed our lives forever. Now, as I write these lines in my study overlooking the garden I love so much, I know that the hardest decision of my life also turned out to be the most liberating one. David never returned to banking. After completing a year as a janitor, he decided to study hotel management. Today, he manages 2 small hotels in my business chain, not because I gave them to him, but because he earned them with his own hard work. David's employees respect him because he knows exactly what each job requires. 2 years ago, he and Cecilia divorced not out of resentment, but because they had grown too different. She had found her passion in cooking, and he had learned that life's true value lies in simplicity, not in luxury. Cecilia graduated as a professional chef and is now the executive chef at the Terrace. Her transformation has been the most dramatic of all. The woman who once mocked my clothes now proudly wears a chef's coat, stained with sweat and honest work. Her dishes have been featured in national publications. Several prestigious restaurants have offered her higher-paying positions, but she chooses to stay where she learned the true meaning of work. She married a humble man, a food supplier for the restaurant, who appreciates her dedication and story of redemption. They have a little girl named Hope, my first granddaughter, not because she's the first by blood, but because she's the first born into a family that truly understands love. Mark found his soulmate through volunteer work. He met Carmen, a social worker at the nursing home, and they married in a simple but love-filled ceremony. Together, they run a small business that specializes in home repairs and renovations for the elderly. The work gives their lives purpose and stability. I now have 3 more grandchildren, Mark and Carmen's 2-year-old twins, who fill my home with laughter every weekend. Watching Mark as a father shows me the man I always hoped he'd become, and now he truly is. The Invisible Mothers Foundation I founded has now expanded internationally, with offices in 12 countries and over 10,000 elderly women who have reclaimed their dignity and rights. The case I'm proudest of is that of an 80-year-old woman in Colombia whose children had locked her in a nursing home to steal her house. Our lawyers not only helped her reclaim her property, but also set a legal precedent protecting hundreds of others in similar situations. I've written 3 books about my journey. The first, The Invisible Woman, became a global bestseller and was adapted by Netflix. Every dollar in royalties goes directly to the foundation. It's ironic that the story of my humiliation became the source of dignity for thousands of other women. Juana, my housekeeper, has become much more than that. She's my companion, my confidant, and part of the family I chose. When her grandchildren visit, my house fills with a kind of joy I never experienced when my own children were young, because this relationship is built on mutual respect, not obligation. Now, at 74, I'm in excellent health. I practice yoga every morning, swim in my backyard pool, and travel frequently to give talks about dignity in old age and healthy family relationships. I have more energy now than ever before, because I finally live for myself, not just for others. My children join me for dinner once a month, not out of duty, but because they truly want to. We laugh, talk, and love each other sincerely. When little Hope calls me Grandma Laura, her smile lighting up the whole room, I know I've found a true connection, not through blood, but through healing. The restaurant where it all began has become a symbol of second chances. We make it a policy to hire those who've faced hardship, single mothers, older workers, and ex-convicts seeking reintegration. The Terrace isn't just a successful business, it's a community built on compassion. Elias, my loyal business partner, retired last year. At his farewell party, he told me something I'll never forget. Laura, in 15 years of working with you, I never once saw a poor housemaid. I only saw a brilliant businesswoman, and I was just waiting for the day you'd see her too. I have completely forgiven my children, not because I've forgotten, but because they truly changed. They worked to earn that forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't a gift, it's the result of growth. The lawyer advised me to revise my will. I did, leaving a small portion of my estate to my children, while the majority remains with the foundation. They've learned how to live on their own, and that makes me proud. This morning, as I sat on the balcony sipping my coffee, I thought about the question reporters always ask me: do you ever regret being so harsh with your children? My answer remains the same: no. Sometimes, true love requires decisions that seem cruel but are necessary for growth. I don't regret being a mother. I only regret not realizing sooner that kindness should never come at the cost of self-destruction. Respect doesn't come from the title of being a mother. It comes from unwavering actions and an unbreakable will. I always tell young mothers, love your children enough to teach them that real love must be mutual, that love without respect is just manipulation disguised as affection, and that your worth is never measured by how much you sacrifice. Today, I am no longer just a mother who endured. I am a complete woman, strong, free, and deserving of respect. Sometimes, the most painful thing in life isn't losing money or status. It's realizing that the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But as Laura's story shows, even in pain, there's a chance to heal, to learn to love again, and to find yourself. Motherhood isn't always gentle. It's sometimes made of tough lessons and necessary silence that allows others to grow up. Because true love isn't only about giving endlessly, it's also about knowing when to stop so others can learn to appreciate. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can rewrite the future. What about you? If you were in Laura's place, would you have the courage to do what she did to teach your children through a painful but necessary lesson? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone out there find their own way. And if you believe every story holds a lesson worth reflecting on, follow the channel so we can keep listening, keep learning to love, and keep growing stronger together through the stories to come.